It's Coach Cimoroni from Undeniable, and I have Gwen Janssen from Colorado. How are you, Gwendolyn?
I'm doing awesome. How are you this morning?
Well, this morning for you, this afternoon for me. So,
yes, true. Absolutely.
Absolutely. 2 hours behind. But, Gwendolyn, you have an amazing and varied story. And that's why I wanted to have you on the podcast, because you're heading up. Is it the AUDHD designation? Talk a little bit about that. I'm brand new to this, so I know everything about it, because we love diversity. I want to get the stories out there of people's stories. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for the opportunity, because I think that what you're describing is so similar to the experiences of the majority of people that we find today, in that most people aren't aware of what neurodiversity is, what different types of diagnoses and language are used around how we describe it. And so when we talk about AUDHD, that is people that have both simultaneous diagnosis of autism and ADHD, right? So it's just kind of a combination of the two words. Right. But neurodiversity is such a broad umbrella covering, different diagnoses, everything from kind of the more commonly known autism and ADHD, all the way to encompassing Tourette syndrome, bipolar disorder, dyslexia. And so really like a very broad spectrum of diagnoses that fall under neurodiversity. So lots of different language. And I think lots of education to be had for the general population about some of this stuff.
Right. And so when you combine autism and ADHD, what does that look like? What is that? What is the way that human matriculates through life? So, I mean, what are we looking at there?
No, that's a great question. And I think it's an important one, because we know different things about different types of neurodiversity, but when they are, comorbid, kind of what we say in medicine. So when they're occurring at the same time, they can look very different than just their individual diagnoses if someone only had one or the other, right? And so for my experience personally, it can be very challenging dealing with a brain that is both autistic and, and ADHD, because in many ways they're very conflicting, right? So for, my autistic brain, routine is very important. There are times when I can be very literal and I need a lot of logic and rationale in, the why behind why we're doing things. Whereas on the flip side with ADHD, I'm always craving novelty, right? And, and trying to think creatively. People with ADHD are very parallel thinkers versus linear thinkers, right? But you can see how both of these diagnoses, kind of fight one another, right? Because there are a lot of things that are opposite about them. And so that can manifest in a lot of really interesting ways. But the more that we know about how to set ourselves up for success, the better that we're going to be in the workforce and in life in general, which is why I think education about neurodiversity as a whole is so important.
Yeah, I mean, the spectrum, right, of human existence and the human experience is stunning. So it's like in anything, like, so in medicine, there's a whole genre now, or silo, if you will, of looking at every individual as their own medicine. And what I mean by that is, my cancer could be different than your cancer, could be different than that cancer. And so it's specific to me and my DNA and my genetics, but also my environment, and also how I'm living, my lifestyle, and all these things impinge upon it, right? And so there's an art to that solution as opposed to a science only. So we're marrying art and science. And so the same thing with mental illness, for lack of a better term, or mental conditions. You have your own individual diagnoses or own individual situation, for lack of a better term.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think being a nurse, because I've worked in healthcare for over 17 years, right? And, in medicine, we're all about evidence-based practice, right? What does the research show us? What can we, demonstrate is best based on all of this evidence that we have available to us? We are now realizing the importance of maybe moving a little bit away from standardization or using that as our baseline framework, but realizing the importance of individual kind of treatment, support, and all of those things. So people within the neurodiverse community really require the same consideration, right? When we talk about these diagnoses as spectrums, and we know that they can co-occur with other diagnoses. And so it is not very black and white in the sense that it's not, hey, everyone with autism is going to need this. Everyone with dyslexia is going to need this. It's important that we're meeting people where they're at so we can get them the support that they need to really help them thrive. Because a lot of people mistake neurodiversity and some of these, diagnoses with a lack of intelligence or a hindrance in ability, right? And while there are some things that can make it difficult to function in a society that is not incredibly designed to support neurodiversity, it's important that these things can be supported. And there are so many unique strengths that neurodiverse people can bring to life and to the workplace. It's just about understanding how we can, support that in ourselves and in our teams.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's brilliant. And, it's interesting. I didn't know that there are numerous types of Tourette's too.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Verbal and nonverbal. And
yep.
Kind of in between type of thing.
No, absolutely.
I think some facial tics are part of Tourette's, and
yep.
So the more you dig into this fantastic thing that makes us sentient, the brain, the more we don't know. So
I think it's such a beautiful thing, right? I think it speaks to how much room we have to grow. And to be honest, if I had a greater attention span, I would love to be a neuroscientist, because there is nothing more intriguing to me than neurology and the brain. And I just, I'm so excited to see this shift in recognizing that our bodies are very different and so are our brains, right? But that doesn't mean less than or impaired. It just means we need different things.
Sure. And that the opposite, right, of the ADHD or the ADD or whatever term, I'm not versed in that, but the hyper-focused.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. The person that can hyper-focus on stuff just blows me away. And is that a part of the neurodiversity, right? And is that good, bad? Do we assign things because our brain has to put that moniker on it, right? It's really fascinating how we just need to open our mind and our heart to humanity, if you will.
No, absolutely. And I think hyperfocus is a phenomenal example of the strengths that neurodiverse people can bring that, we don't necessarily set them up for success with, right? So as a nursing leader, it's pretty standard, right? That we're working Monday through Friday, day shift hours. Of course, we might work different hours to support the department when needed, but,
right.
I can tell you that my particular neurodiverse brain does not function equally across all of those 40, 50, 60 hours, right? I was literally able to complete about 75% of an nursing orientation rebuild in one day, because I had an incredible, bout of hyper focus where I just dug in and I did this work that technically could have taken weeks or even months, right? And I was able to get a huge chunk of it done in one day. I'm pursuing my doctorate and I was able to write a 13-page research paper in about 3 hours, right? Because again, your brain can just absolutely focus so singularly on a task, and the amount that you can achieve in a short amount of time is really outstanding, right?
Over time, right? Just goes.
Yes.
Let's go. That's amazing. And it's interesting too, because I have a background, in my family in medicine. My dearly departed brother-in-law was an OBGYN. And that guy was unbelievable. I mean, he'd go 36 hours, man. Just, and delivered 7,000 babies in his career. And Navy doctor, did the hysterectomy on Marilyn Quayle. So he had the highest clearance, the second lady back at the Bush administration, and did the Jamaican tour when all those things were happening. No, it was Haiti. It was Haiti back then. And, but to watch that, what he could do on little sleep, just, and I don't know if he used his body up, but we lost him at 60 years old.
Well, and I'm glad that you bring up that point, because when we talk about accommodations or support structures for people that are neurodiverse, right? Yeah. I think that it is important that we recognize that without these support structures, without the accommodations that are going to help our teams, our people, or ourselves achieve that healthy balance in life, there is a significant detriment to the individual, right? I could go on a soapbox about this for hours, but so many neurodivergent people, spend their days masking, right? So putting all of their energy into trying to present in ways that, we have been taught are socially acceptable, or, to your point, perform to a level of, extreme, because, either we're trying to prove something, or, it feels like it's never good enough. And there's a lot of, research into why that might be more prevalent, in the neurodivergent community. But it is not uncommon to see really significant instances of burnout, or, to your point, that challenge with, with shorter lifespan. There's actually studies out there that talk about, untreated ADHD and neurodiversity leading to a significantly shorter lifespan. And
it's such a autism, social anxiety, whatever, but the sleep definitely was deprived in my beautiful brother-in-law's life. I mean, there would be days, and he'd be falling asleep just talking to him, you know what I mean? And just, and I miss him. I just love it.
I'm so sorry for your loss.
I know, right? But it's been a while. He died in 2018. But the other thing is, you see some of that incredible, he said, my superpower was that I could just do that. I could just work, right? And he's got a son, my nephew, who is one of the top coaches in all of college sports. He's the safeties coach for the Ohio State University.
Wow.
And he's a young guy. He's 34. He used to be the defensive coordinator at Duke University, and he just works his tail off. But he's smart. He's committed. He's dynamic. So you see some of that, and then he has a daughter who is one of the top choreographers on the planet. She's done it for Demi Lovato, for Kelly Clarkson, for Anne Hathaway, for Halsey, so you have this freneticism with them. I think they have a little bit more life balance. I think they get more sleep than my dearly departed brother-in-law, but it's you see that in that genetics, right? That gene and the success that they get from it. And I want to discuss that. And I also want to discuss some of the techniques that you could bring to the marketplace, and also some of the inspiration that you've had in your career. But I want to do that after the break. We got to take a break, because these are the people that keep us be able to doing these things and bring stories like you, Gwen, to the marketplace. So we'll be right back with Gwen Janssen. This is Coach Cimoroni for Undeniable.
Infinite Search Solutions, recruitment and placement search services at its finest. Northeast Ohio's premier, easy, fast, and simple way to find the great and perfect candidate that you deserve. Matt Burns and his incredible team at Infinite Search Solutions are terrific. We are proud to have them as a sponsor. Reach out to Matt at 440-249-0485 or at their website, www.in-finite.com.
Hey, this is Coach Cimoroni for Blood Time and Undeniable Podcast and PalladiumEdge.com. I'm here to tell you about BVS Film Productions and Premier Podcast Productions. They are our production partner. Phenomenal. They do Blood Time. They do undeniable. They've done some of our corporate videos for some of our clients. They are professional, responsible, experienced, creative, and they deliver. More importantly, when you call them, they call you back. When you email them, they email you back. When you text them, they text you back. Just love their entire philosophy and their professionalism, and most importantly, what they deliver to you and to the marketplace. They'll up your game. BVS Film Productions and Premier Podcast Productions.
And we're back. This is Gwen Janssen from Colorado, but also mental diversity. And we want to talk a little bit about the mind and also what you're doing to promote this, to help get this out into the marketplace. Obviously, this is what we're doing with this here. And who are some of your inspirations to do so?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am one of the very many cases of late diagnosis of neurodiversity, which is actually much more common among women, as it is more likely for boys and men to be diagnosed early in life. So you do see a really high frequency of women that have had a history of misdiagnosis or late diagnosis, or completely missed diagnosis, and they're just undiagnosed and unsupported. And so for me personally, when I finally received my diagnoses, it was incredibly eye-opening for me, and it came along with a ton of different emotions. But the driving force was it shouldn't have to be this way, right? People shouldn't have to suffer through decades of their life not knowing how to set themselves up for success and not knowing what their needs might be, right? And so I
had to be
pretty
so
much
frustrating for you. Oh my God.
It is. And it's, the level of turmoil that can accompany it, sure. Is I think more profound than a lot of people recognize, right? We see a lot of co-diagnoses of depression and anxiety, which can be a misdiagnosis, or they can be accurate diagnoses that are a direct result of unsupported and undiagnosed neurodiversity, right? And so pretty much immediately after my diagnosis.
Holy cow. Wow.
Say that again?
The complexity of that chain, right? Wow.
I could not agree more, right? And again, this is a topic that we could quite literally talk all day about, right? Because there is so much that goes into it and so many things that I think people don't know that they need to know. Right. But I want to make sure that I'm answering your question. So I apologize that, the neurodiverse brain, I can just ping all around. Yes. So I pretty much immediately started writing a book about my experience as a neurodiverse professional, and then founded the END Institute for Excellence in Neurodiversity. So in writing my book, I wanted to partially share my story, but also give people a pathway to potentially recognize these things in themselves, recognize them in their loved ones and their coworkers and their leaders, and ways that we can set ourselves or others up for success when they are neurodivergent, whether they know it or not, right? Like these are the tools that can be really helpful for our brain wiring specifically. And through the END Institute, I have done a ton of public speaking and advocacy and kind of resource, stratification, where there is so much information available on the internet today. And the majority of it is really not the best, the best evidence or the best information that we should be using to educate ourselves and to elevate ourselves as well, right? And so again, as a nurse who, has done so much reading in evidence and research, it was important to me to create a space where people can come and get reliable information without having to scour through endless websites and ads and, and services that are just there trying to kind of exploit them for lack of a better word. And so that's what the END Institute does, is just, sharing of information, advocacy, elevation, of the neurodivergent population through, training and education. And so those are two of the things that I have done since my diagnoses, to not only kind of help heal myself, right, but also to empower others and hopefully make the journey easier for other people. because no one should have to struggle and to suffer this significantly when the answers are there. We just need to know what's going on.
That's such a great point because, people that are struggling, they're hurting, and then they get these dirty information. You scrub that clean, that dirt, get away from it, and just get to the point where they can be helped, right? So you're giving them, that organic soil to grow, that beautiful blossom as opposed to polluted soil. You know what I mean? And I love that because the internet, while it's fantastic, it also can be very polluted with some very bad actors, if you will, out there. And I really appreciate great actors like you that help people in need. And I have that dear to my heart is that my uncle, my mother's brother, was diagnosed at 21 as paranoid schizophrenic with a high IQ. Man, and 160 IQ, was brilliant. I got chills talking about my Uncle Lenny. I love my Uncle Lenny. He lived a tortured life. And this was, he was diagnosed in like 1960.
Right.
Whatever. And there was just no help for him. But he went on a journey to read and educate himself. And he would go on these crazy diets like bananas and peanuts, because he knew that in those foods would help because he knew what he had.
Yes.
Smart. He knew what he had. Mm-hmm. He didn't want to be treated with Thorazines that were the commonplace that would just vacation.
Yep.
Human, you know what I mean? Well, heck, they were doing still frontal lobotomies back then,
Yep.
Shock treatment, the cuckoo's nest, right?
Exactly.
Movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but, and the scars coming out of Jack Nicholson's head. And then he had this beautiful brain, this beautiful personality, completely made into a zombie by that situation. And now we have this light of Gwendolyn, and your compatriots bringing this light to you. So my heart to you on that, because maybe my Uncle Lenny could have, if he was born now, right, could be somebody that had a different life.
Mm-hmm. No, and I love that you bring that up because that could not be more true, Coach, right? I mean, there is still today, even though we know so much more than we did, right, those 60 years ago or so, there is still so much stigma around any type of cognitive diagnosis, right? Like anything that has to do with your brain, it is instantly stigmatized, right? In my work, I talk with parents a lot, right, who might never have been diagnosed themselves, but their children are very clearly neurodiverse. And they come to me and they're like, what do I do? Like, how can I help? Right. And I had a conversation with a mom not long ago who was describing her son's behavior to me, and kind of all of the symptom presentations really aligned very closely with neurodiversity, right? Like every new story she would tell me was just kind of further and further lending me to believe that that's kind of where we're at. Now, I am not a behavioral health professional. Yes, I am a nurse, but behavioral health is not my, or psychology or neurology are not my specialties. And so I am not qualified to diagnose anyone, which is what I shared with her. But as I'm telling her, I think it would be a really good idea for you to bring your son in to be evaluated. Every moment in the conversation that kind of brought us back to that, she would respond with, I don't want him to have that label. She's like, because my brother had that label and he suffered his entire life.
Yes.
And it's just so interesting because I can completely empathize with her fear for her child, right? However, we need to flip the script and recognize that suffering in our lives is the direct result of not understanding what it is that is going on in our brains, how they work well, and what we need to support ourselves and what support we need from those around us. And not having a name for these things, right? Because with ADHD and autism, I struggled my entire life with shame and guilt of, well, you just need to try harder, right? Everyone else can do it. Why can't you, right? Like you're just lazy, you're this, you're that. And I have accomplished a lot in my lifetime, but you still struggle with all of these because you don't know the reason why you're showing up this way, right? And so when we remember that the suffering comes from lack of support, I think we can restructure our focus to recognize that the diagnosis and appropriate supportive treatment of these different types of neurodiversities is how we are going to help people live fulfilling and happy lives, right? How much different would your uncle's experience have been had he been surrounded with people and a care team that wanted him to be able to express his amazing brain and his amazing personality instead of stifling it because they were scared of something they didn't understand.
That is so beautiful what you said, because things don't happen in a vacuum, right?
Right.
So you touch one person and you don't know the ripple effect through this time continuum, right? And the other thing too, I remember having conversations with my uncle. This is when I'm 10, 11 years old.
Yep.
This is the late 60s. And he's talking about the ozone layer.
Mm-hmm.
He's saying cow flatulence is the biggest reason right now that we're losing the ozone layer. In 1967, he's saying this.
Right. And everyone's looking at him like, oh my God.
What are you talking
Right. Like, let's get you a jacket where you can hug yourself, because what are you talking about? And fast forward to now, he was absolutely right.
Yes.
No one was willing to accept that. Yes.
Yes, exactly. And he said this other thing I'll never forget. In 1967, he predicted that in the mid 70s, early to mid 70s, Hank Aaron would break Babe Ruth's record. Yeah, Hank Aaron did. Well, 1974. 7 years prior. Now, obviously, that's amazing, right? But that's the kind of brain he had.
Mm-hmm. Because it's pattern recognition, right? So even like people that are neurodiverse often tend to be really great judges of character because they notice things that most other people don't pick up on, right? So when you talk about like, how could he possibly know these things? His brain was wired to know those things, right? And if someone had just taken the time to sit down and listen to him, again, think of how different his experience would be. And think about the potential for humanity and the world if we were more supportive of people that were not linear thinkers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
My mother and I talk about it all the time. That was her baby brother. And she used to say, what a beautiful soul that we just lost, lost him at 19 years old. And, he's a tortured soul, but that said, I love what you're doing. That's, this is fantastic. How can people find this? How can Gwendolyn tell us where we can come to?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So if anyone is interested in learning more about the END Institute, they're welcome to look at our website. So it's endinstitute.com. There's the information for the book on there as well, in addition to many of the publications and podcasts and different speaking events and things like that I've done. However, I also highly encourage people to be really discerning in the sources where they're getting their information, right? So some of my favorites are CHADD.org, so CHADD, right? So that is the children and adult organization for people with ADHD. And they have been around for actually a really long time, and they are an incredible source of evidence-based information, right? Which I absolutely love. They have newsletters, they have articles, they have podcasts, they have training for parents, for individuals, for teachers and caregivers. So I absolutely love CHADD. They're a phenomenal organization. ADD.org. So, we won't get into this today, but the diagnostic language that we use for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is now just ADHD with a couple of subtypes, where it used to be ADD. So some of these organizations were named back before the language changed, but ADD.org is another great one. And I also love the publication Attitude Magazine, but instead of ATT, it's ADD, right? So ADD Attitude Magazine. So their publication is online, and they, again, are just a really wonderful evidence-based source of information. So those are three that I always recommend people start with, because you can do searches, right? If you're like, Gwen, like, I don't know why I can't remember anything, right? Like, why is it so hard for me to remember people's names? Or if I don't write it down, it's not going to get done. And I'm talking in a span of walking from the front of the unit to my office, which, might be 100 yards, right? And I can forget something that quickly. You can search for individual topics that you want to know more about. Does nutrition impact neurodiversity and how successful we are? What about sleep, right? Like all of these individual things, you can look at smaller chunks because it can seem very overwhelming at the beginning. So, but these sources are very reputable in the sense that what you're reading there and what you're watching and seeing and, and learning is going to be reputable evidence-based information. So those are great places to start.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, Gwendolyn, you are a fountain and knowledge, and that's beautiful. And that's what Undeniable is all about. You're undeniable.
Oh, thank you. I am so happy to have had this opportunity to be here with you today. And it is such a pleasure. And I can't tell you how grateful I am that you shared these stories with me. I think that it speaks to the fact that neurodiversity touches us way more than we probably recognize. And so thank you for being vulnerable with me and with, your listeners about these stories, because the more that we talk about it, the more that we're going to break down those stigmas. So thank you for chatting with me today and for sharing your own stories. I think that's so wonderful.
Well, I appreciate that. And I live with it every day because I'm married to a second grade teacher.
So yes, you absolutely live that life.
And God love her that she's been also a great mother to two children who've had some of their challenges as well. And I am blessed to have that angel in my life. So, and I'm blessed to have you on this show. Thank you so much, Gwendolyn.
No, thank you, Coach. And I look forward to talking to you again soon.
You got it. Peace in Colorado. This is Coach Cimoroni for Undeniable. We are all blood, love to all. Peace.
I just love the mission at Edwin's. My friend Brandon Krastowski at Edwin's Leadership and Restaurant Institute brings a unique approach at giving formerly incarcerated adults a foundation in the hospitality industry. What a marvelous mission. Thank you, Brandon, for bringing these wonderful people back into productive society. Every human being, regardless of their past, has the right to a fair and equal future. Give them a try because their food is magnificent. Their service is first rate, and Brandon is a true Cleveland light. EdwinsRestaurant.org. We love you.
We want to thank my good friend Kevin Goodman, the managing partner at Blue Bridge Networks, as our newest partner and sponsor. Please reach out to them for all of your managed IT services needs, cloud computing needs, data center services requirements, and all infrastructure solutions services. Kevin Goodman and Blue Bridge Networks. Seek them out at 1-866-990-2583. That's 1-866-990-2583 and at info@bbnllc.com.